almost 500 people that have joined us. And this will also be live streamed on YouTube for those of you joining us there. We have our chat open, so if you have any questions or comments, please add that to the chat. We ask that you keep the chat respectful. This is a place for folks to share their student loan stories, ask questions about their student loans, and what we're here to talk about, which is the public service loan forgiveness waiver and recent updates in the student loan space. We will try as hard as we can to get to your questions and have some live Q&A at different breaks. We also have live transcription going and closed captioning for those of you that want to read along. And just thank you so much for joining. We'll get started here in a few minutes. All right, it looks like we have folks from all over the country. Thank you again for joining us this evening. It's just great to have you all here. I think we have almost 850 of you on. As I said, please add your comments and questions to the chat box. And we have folks here from our team. So I'm Natalia Abrams. I'm the president here at Student Debt Crisis Center. We are a nonprofit centered on the needs of student loan borrowers, dedicated to ending the student debt crisis. We also believe in providing you all the resources and materials and updates that we can as we get them. And we're honored to be joined by our partners at Savvy. And from Savvy, we have the Director of External Affairs, Lindsay Clark. Lindsay, do we have you on?
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and really looking forward to being able to answer as many questions as we can.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. And from our Student Debt Crisis Center team, we have Cody Hunanian, our Executive Director, Viva Kakar, and Orlando Cavallo, our Student Debt Crisis Center Fellows, trying as much as they can to help you in this very robust chat. As I said, there will be time throughout the presentation and at the end for question and answer. So just to go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, we're going to discuss student loan basics, policy updates, repayment plans for those of you that we know are still currently paying, even though for most of us, student loans are on pause, and public service loan forgiveness. At the end, we're going to share an online tool that is provided to you at completely no charge by our partners at Savvy, which can help you understand and enroll in all of these programs that we talked to you about today. We're completely aware this is a lot of dense financial information, and this tool we have found from so many student loan borrowers just makes the process so much easier. Finally, we just always want to make sure that you know this, that we are not financial counselors or attorneys. We are advocates, many of us borrowers ourselves, and experts that are here to help you try to navigate these complicated processes. So today we're going to go over updates, where are we at with student loan debt. We want to help you understand your loans. We want to help you understand federal loan forgiveness, or as it's properly called, public service loan forgiveness. Help with repaying your loans if you're looking at potentially the payments restarting at the end of August. What are you going to do? We want to make sure there are tools available, and then how to use this really great, efficient, Savvy tool. So let's start with updates. Just want to let you know where we're at right now with the COVID payment pause, current policy updates, and some additional info. So currently, for a majority of federal loan borrowers, payments have been on pause. I believe it's March 13th, 2020. So we're now at almost 2.5 years of the majority of federal student loans being on pause. Payments are currently suspended and interest is waived until August 31st of this year, of 2022. Right now, I would say they have extended the payment pause multiple times. We're hearing mixed information on whether payments will be extended or not. As a borrower, it's always important to just know your options and be prepared in case they do turn on September 1st. Also important to note that you can still recertify. We're going to talk more about income-driven repayment programs, but you can still recertify right now and make sure you're set at the lowest payment possible when or if payments do resume on August 31st. So there's also been some relief for borrowers that have defaulted on their student loans. Employers are instructed to halt wage garnishments. They cannot deduct from your paycheck right now. And if that has happened to you, you are entitled to a refund. In addition, they are not taking tax refunds or Social Security withholdings from your federal student loans, and collection activities such as those awful calls that lenders do over and over and letters to borrowers, that also has been paused during this COVID time, which again began in March of 2020. So as I mentioned, most borrowers are receiving COVID relief. Unfortunately, we know that's not all. So if you have a federal direct loan, or in quotes, a federally held loan, your loan is eligible. That's, 38 or so million student loan borrowers. However, there are some, to absolutely no fault of your own, have something called a commercially held FFEL loan. That's a federal family education loan. Those loans were excluded. It was a small amount of loans, but we've heard from many of you that you've still been required to pay during this time. Also, those that have Perkins loans or school loans have been excluded from relief. In addition, defaulted FFEL, federal family education loans, are now receiving relief. At the beginning of the pandemic, that was not happening. That was an additional added relief. And unfortunately, this has only been for the federal side. We do know that private loan borrowers are struggling, but their loans have not been put on pause with the 0% interest. So we want to give you some updates. If you've been with us before, this may not be new to you, but it's very important to know that a lot of people's student loan servicers are changing. Most importantly, Navient, which was the most complained about student loan servicer, FedLoan, which houses your public service loan forgiveness, which many of you are here for today, and a smaller one, Granite State, have stopped servicing loans. That is about 16 million of student loan borrowers that will have a new servicer, or 35%. Importantly, and Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the change of Fed loan servicing to Mohia is beginning July 1st. So that's coming up in just, a week, that the new loan servicer for federal, or for Fed loan servicing, which houses public service loan forgiveness applicants, your servicer will now be Mohia starting next month, or in a week from now. There's also been some updates to income-driven repayments, and I would say that this is still being worked on. There's more announcements to come here, but what we have now is that the Department of Education is trying to address forbearance steering, which means so many student loan borrowers were called up, said that they were struggling with their student loans and they were put on a forbearance, when an income-driven repayment plan would have been better. They're working on a one-time adjustment to account for certain long-term forbearances for those that to count to more credits towards income-driven repayments. In addition, there's increased progress for income-driven repayment forgiveness by conducting revisions and reviews of your account of past inaccuracies. At the moment, this is all happening automatically, but again, there will be more updates here. believe there's immediate debt cancellation for about 40,000 additional borrowers through the public service loan forgiveness waiver, which I'm just about to talk about, and Lindsay's going to go very in depth on. And thousands will receive forgiveness through income-driven repayment, and millions will receive additional credits that you may not have received. The department is trying to figure out, in addition to working on broad-based debt cancellation, how they can give you credit for time served, so to speak. So what most of you came here for, and I see now that we have over 1,000 on and many people on YouTube watching it, so thank you for participating. I definitely see the robust chat. There has been a public service loan forgiveness waiver. This waiver has a deadline that's very important to know, of October 31st of 2022 of this year. The Department of Ed announced a limited waiver that allows all payments by student loan borrowers to count towards public service loan forgiveness, regardless of your loan program or your payment plan. So many borrowers, I think something like 99% of borrowers were denied public service loan forgiveness years ago when they first tried to apply. If you have been denied, but you have had a federal loan this whole time working as a public service worker, we urge you to apply again. It's quite possible that you will get that final cancellation you've been looking for. They will be reviewing the denied applications for errors, giving you credits for the time that you have paid for. And this, for many people, this is automatically happening, and they will automatically provide credit served for military service members and federal employees using federal data matches. I will say that data match is taking some time, but Lindsay, as I mentioned, Lindsay Clark will go through much more in depth on this PSLF waiver to help you understand if you qualify. Finally, there's been some targeted debt cancellation. As advocates, we're still fighting for broad-based debt cancellation and making sure that everyone receives debt cancellation, but there has been some strides in this space. We know that the Department of Education has discharged $5.8 billion for 560,000 student loan borrowers who attended the now bankrupt Corinthian colleges. That is really great. There's also been an additional $6 billion for 200,000 borrowers for colleges like ITT Tech, the Arts Institute, and Westwood College. And then another 323,000 borrowers have received total and permanent disability discharge automatically through a data match with Social Security. This is a start, but as I said, we are still fighting very hard for broad-based debt cancellation. We have been told that there will be a decision as soon as late July, and that is something that we know so many of you that are on our list and work very hard have been fighting for, and we thank you for that. So now we're going to get to the student loan part of this and understanding your student loans. We're going to go over some basics, talk about those loan servicers again, and let you know where to find this information. So it's really important to just know what type of loan. I know many of you know this, but unfortunately we get lots of calls of people that do not know if they have a federal or private loan. For your federal loans, you should be able to find all of your information at studentaid.gov. Federal loans have a fixed interest rate. They have repayment plans available. They have hardship deferments. They have public service loan forgiveness. They've had the ability for the majority of them to be on a pause at 0% interest. And there's also the potential for rehabilitation if you fall into default. For private loans, if you don't see your loans at studentaid.gov, then we urge you to go look at your credit report or contact your lender. These interest rates can vary, and we've heard from you, they can go as high as 12, 15% or more, which is egregious and horrible. We know that people struggle with private loans. Unfortunately, there are no guaranteed or required payment plans. There's no guaranteed hardship deferment, and there's no default rehabilitation. So the types of federal loans that you have are direct loans. which are all loans issued after 2010. So for those of you with newer loans, you have a direct loan. Perkins loans are loans that were issued by your school, not included in the pause, and federal family education loans. These are loans that were largely issued before 2010 and loans that did not used to qualify for public service loan forgiveness, but currently under this temporary waiver do. And we will go over that more. We're just showing this to like familiarize yourself if you haven't been there in a long time. It's been a couple of years since you've been paying. This is studentaid.gov. This is where you can see what type of loan you have if you're in a repayment program. We show you this, and actually it's not been updated because now we've lost Navient. But the reason to look at this is some loan servicers, such as a Navient, you could have a private loan and a federal loan with the same company. Private loans tend to come from banks or companies like SoFi, Sallie Mae, and then Mohia, the big one, Nelnet, Great Lakes. Now, I believe Ada Vanchit is the new company that has replaced Navient. So how do you find your federal loans? Again, you go to studentaid.gov. You can access your federal student loan database. You can speak with your student loan servicer and find your information there. And we're going to speak more in depth with Lindsay about the Savvy tool, which can do this all for you if you're, just don't want to have to deal with studentaid.gov. Private loans, again, if it's not there, do you have a cosigner? Check your credit report or contact your lender or debt collector. So for those of you that have had Navient or have had a servicer that's changed, what we're urging you to do is to make sure your contact information is up to date. It will make the transfer much easier. Take a look at your email or snail mail that you're receiving. We've been hearing from some folks in public service loan forgiveness that they thought Mohia was a scam. They're not, they're your new loan servicer. And unfortunately, because we've seen so many mistakes from loan servicers, make sure to save copies of your payment history, of your loan records, as much as you can have on your end. It really helps with the process if there are any problems. And then set a reminder for yourself to log into the new servicer website and update your information once it is transferred over. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Cody, who's going to go more in depth on federal loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness.
Actually, I'm going to have our expert, Lindsay Clark, jump into loan forgiveness. Lindsay, are you?
Yep, I'm here. Yep, I'm here. Great. Thanks so much, Natalia. And it's great to be with all you guys. I see so many questions in the chat. I wish we could answer them all, but hopefully, this will help provide some context and information about the public service loan forgiveness program in particular, because, it's been notoriously difficult for so many people to understand, let alone achieve success with it. So we're going to sort of break that down. We're going to talk about sort of the original rules of the program. And then we're going to talk about, what's changed under this new limited waiver, what the application process entails, and sort of how you can determine whether or not, you're going to be eligible or you've been impacted by these changes. So if we can go on to the next slide. Great. So let's first sort of recap what public service loan forgiveness is. So public service loan forgiveness, or PSLF, is essentially full forgiveness on the remainder of your loan balance after you've made 120 qualifying payments. Now, qualifying payments, if you could see me right now, I'm doing that in air quotes because the devil's really in the details as to what constitutes a qualifying payment. We're going to go through that in more detail here in a second. But it's important to know that the program started in October of 2007, October 1, 2007, meaning from that point in time to present day is sort of the eligible time frame in which you can have qualifying employment or payment history. So if you've been in public service since 1995 and been making payments on your loans since 1995, unfortunately from 1995 up until October 2007 is sort of irrelevant for the purposes of this program. It's really from October 2007 to present day. Now, again, you need to make 120 qualifying payments. Many people, talk about this program as being a 10-year program, but that's if you're making those payments consecutively, which you don't need to do. You just need to make 120 cumulative or total payments. Okay. Now, the important thing to remember about these 120 payments is that while they don't need to be consecutive, the maximum that you can receive in any given calendar year of 12 months is 12 credits. So you can receive 1 credit per 1 payment per 1 month. All right. So you can't double up on payments and get 2 credits a month, or make a huge lump sum payment and get more credits than you are allotted. So the earliest that you could achieve this program or achieve forgiveness under this program, if you were making consecutive payments, if you can only receive a maximum of 12 a year, right? You've got to get to 120. If you do the math, that's 10 years. Okay. So that's sort of a breakdown of those 120 payments. Now, when you do receive that forgiveness, it is completely tax-free. Okay. So there's no tax bomb waiting for you or anything like that. So that's sort of the basic overview of what public service loan forgiveness is. That was sort of the promise of the program. Now, how it works in actuality, is sort of far different from that. But we're going to sort of break this down a little bit further. So let's talk about your employment. What is the eligible or qualifying employment that you need in order to qualify? So it's really 2 categories you can think about it. You can work for any government agency, federal, state, local, or tribal. Okay. That often includes things like public safety, firefighters, police, first responders, public health, nurses, staff, other healthcare professions, public education, teachers, faculty, staff, any government employee. It doesn't matter in what capacity you're employed. You could be administrative, janitorial, doesn't matter. Just matters what your employer is. Okay. So that's on the government side. Or you can work for a 501c3 nonprofit. All right. There are about 1.2 or 1.5 million nonprofits nationwide. These include charitable organizations, nonprofit healthcare facilities, nonprofit private schools, legal aid services, many more. Many healthcare entities are nonprofit. Many and most universities, higher education are nonprofit entities. And I'm going to show you a little bit later on in the presentation how the free Savvy tool can actually help you to identify whether your employer or past employer is eligible. All right. So that's sort of the eligibility based on employment. All right. So if you're trying to figure out sort of how to become eligible for this program, here's sort of a timeline of basics of what you need to do. First, you want to figure out, are you paying back a federal direct loan? Okay. Because that's going to help you determine whether or not you might need to consolidate first into a direct loan in order to make it eligible. All right, but you need to at least be paying back a federal loan. Then, does your employer qualify? This is usually the easiest for most people to figure out. But again, we can show you some tools later on that will help you with that process. Next, are you enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan? All right, the best payment plan to be on for public service loan forgiveness is what's called an income-driven repayment plan. This is going to lower or minimize your monthly payment to ultimately maximize that forgiveness. Then, once you've sort of solidified your loan type, your employment, and your repayment plan, you're then going to want to document your employment using what's called the PSLF form. Now, there is one form and one form only for the public service loan forgiveness program. And some people call it the PSLF form, but it's technically called the Employment Certification Form, or ECF. If you Google this, it should be the first thing that pops up on that search. And essentially, it gets signed off by you, the borrower, and then it gets signed off by your employer, current and or any previous employment you might have had, attesting to basically the fact that they are an eligible and qualifying institution, attesting to the dates that you've worked there or currently work. And then that gets submitted. Previously, it was submitted to FedLoan. It's going to be submitted to FedLoan for about another week. And then as of July 1st, all of those forms need to be submitted to MOHELA. Okay, that's MOHELA, MOHELA or MOHEA. Not sure how you really pronounce it, but MOHELA. Now, you are not required to submit that really until you want to apply for the program in totality. So after perhaps you've made 120 payments. However, it's highly encouraged that you submit that employment certification form pretty much every 12 months or when you switch jobs. That way you are certifying pretty much 12 credits over 12 credits over 12 credits, inching your way closer to that 120. And that way, if there are any issues, you're able to catch those as early on in the process as possible. Okay. So you want to be submitting that, often or as often as possible, but really 12 months, every 12 months is advised. All right. So that's basically sort of the PSLF timeline and sort of how you can make yourself eligible. Now let's talk about PSLF in the context of pandemic and some of the pandemic relief that's been happening. So first and foremost, the payment pause. So the payment pause that began back in March of 2020 under the CARES Act and has since been extended 6 times, most recently through August 31st. Sorry, guys, that slide is inaccurate. So August 31st of this year is when the payment pause is scheduled to end. So that's about 30 months that payments have been paused, okay? Now, if you've been working during this period of time for a qualifying employer more than 30 hours a week, all right, you are eligible pretty much for all 30 of those months to essentially receive a free PSLF credit for each one of those months. So 30 months, 30 PSLF credits out of the 120 total that you need without having to have made a payment at all, okay? So this is really significant. Many borrowers I found are confused or misinformed about this. They actually opted to continue making payments during this time because they thought they needed to in order to be eligible. You can actually have any payments that you made voluntarily during the payment pause to be refunded to you, okay? Especially those who are eligible for public service loan forgiveness. There's no need or no reason why you would want to pay into that when you ultimately can have that forgiven. All right. So like I said, we're going to show you a little bit later on the Savvy tool completely for free for the SDCC community, how this can help you to sort of not only understand your eligibility, but then we actually help you to submit this documentation in these forms and help monitor your situation so that you can actually cross that finish line. All right, so let's talk a little bit more in depth about what does qualify for PSLF and what doesn't. And I want to preface this by saying I'm going to first sort of be walking you through this based on the original rules of the program, okay? Unfortunately, these were the rules that were filled with technicalities about your loan type and repayment plan that kept a lot of borrowers from achieving success under the program. So when you see it in blue right here, okay, or the does qualify for PSLF, again, this is going through it before the sort of the limited waiver was instituted, okay? So when it comes to what's qualifying for PSLF, loan types, direct loans only. So that includes subsidized and unsubsidized, direct grad, parent plus, and direct consolidated loans, okay? Repayment plans, all right, either income-driven repayment plans or the 10-year standard repayment. And when it comes to employer, all levels of government, federal, state, local, or tribal, and 501c3 nonprofit. All right, so that's what does qualify for PSLF. Let's talk about what does not qualify for PSLF. All right, so what does not qualify for PSLF? And again, this was under the original rules of the program. This has since changed under the temporary waiver, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. What does not qualify or did not qualify were, as far as loans go, FFEL loans, okay, those federal family education loans, Perkins loans, loans in default, and private student loans. As far as repayment plans go, any of the extended, graduated, or extended graduated did not qualify, as well as any payments as well as any non-payment months in deferment, forbearance, or defaults. As far as employers that do not qualify, government contractors do not qualify, labor unions, 501c4 nonprofits and political groups, and religious instruction. Okay. All right. Now, that was under the sort of original rules of the program. And I can't help but see some comments in the chat. I know that this is dense, and I saw someone say this is giving me a stress headache, and I can completely relate to that, which is why, again, just as a reminder, at the sort of towards the end of the presentation, if you can hang on for that long, we're going to show you a tool and hopefully a resource that can help take off of that stress from you, the borrower, and help bear that burden for you. And so I hope that this can be a relief for many of you on the call here today. So this is the good part, though. This is the good news. Back in October of last year, on October 6th, 2021, the Department of Education announced pretty much a huge overhaul to this public service loan forgiveness program. Because up until then, less than 1% of borrowers had been accepted based on those qualifications I had just laid out. So they introduced an overhaul, and this overhaul essentially expands the eligibility requirements for the program for sort of a 1-year limited time look back. So they're sort of retroactively for borrowers who have made payments on their loans, we're able to look back and expand the eligibility to get payments that previously might not have counted to be able to count. So this is what they're calling the temporary PSLF limited waiver, okay? And so now under this limited waiver, which extends until October 31st of this year, here's sort of what qualifies. So any periods of repayment on FFEL loans count, even if they were before consolidation, okay? Periods of repayment on Perkins loans count, again, even if they are before consolidation, okay? In addition to any and all payments made on direct loans. When it comes to repayment plans, any payments made on any type of repayment plan, okay? That includes extended graduated, standard, income driven, any type of repayment plan can count. And on top of that, previously you used to have to make that payment for the full and on-time monthly amount. Now they are expanding that. They haven't really been clear as to sort of the depths in which they're willing to allow, late payments and or maybe not for the full amount, but they're allowing late payments or payments less than the amount due to count. So they've really expanded the eligibility here. And then last but not least, when it comes to employers, not much has changed here, okay? You still need to have been employed by either a government entity or a 501c3 nonprofit. However, you do not need to be employed by a qualifying employer at the time you are applying for forgiveness. So let's say you are retired now and tried to apply for the program a couple of years ago when you were working and were rejected because of one of these technicalities, but you had made 120 payments. Well, now, even though you're retired or no longer working, you can apply for the program and receive full forgiveness on your loans, despite the fact that you might no longer be employed. Okay. Also, if you have ever received teacher loan forgiveness, those periods or years in which you basically counted towards teacher loan forgiveness can also now count towards PSLF, public service loan forgiveness. Okay. That's sort of a new one on the employment side. So all to really say what this waiver has done is it means that you don't need to reach the 120 before October 31st of this year, but it means that you should be taking action. If you have ever had any interaction with this program before, whether you've been rejected, whether you think you might be eligible or not, I would say my best advice here is don't self-select, okay? You want to take one action and one action only, which is to submit that employment certification form for your full employment history so that you're going to be able to take advantage of the maximum benefit under this limited waiver. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to sort of lay out step by step what you should sort of be doing to figure out your eligibility and then take that necessary action. So the first thing you want to do is determine what type of loans you have. Okay. If you don't know what kind of loans you have, you can find that information by going to studentaid.gov. All right. Logging in using your FSA login and ID and password, visiting the My Aid page and scroll down to the loan breakdown section. It's pretty intuitive. So, you should be able to find your way there. And from there, you'll find a list of each of the federal loans you have borrowed, all right? Even if you've paid off the loan or consolidated it into a new direct loan. Now, you're going to want to look for a few things. If you have direct loans, they're going to begin with the word direct. So it should be pretty easy. If you have FFEL loans or federal family education loans, they're going to start with FFEL, F-F-E-L. Perkins loans, they're going to start with Perkins, all right? So you will be able to sort of understand your loan type through there. All right, once you have figured that out, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so you figured out what types of loans you have. Now let's say you have at least one federal loan that is not a direct loan, okay? All right, so you have at least one loan that's not a direct loan. Maybe it's FFEL, maybe it's Perkins, all right? What you're going to need to do is to consolidate that loan, all right, before October 31st of this year, okay? You can either consolidate that loan itself or with your other loans, all right? But in order to take advantage of this PSLF limited waiver, you're going to need to consolidate it into a direct loan. Payments prior to the consolidation are still going to be able to count, okay? However, you need to still consolidate it. So you can check your employer's eligibility using the PSLF help tool at studentaid.gov/PSLF, all right? But if you have at least one loan that is not direct, you will need to consolidate before you then submit that PSLF form, okay, that employment certification form. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, let's say you have direct loans. All right, so good, you've got all direct loans already, and some employment certified, all right? So if you've already applied for PSLF and had some employment certified, okay, so meaning you're likely with Fed Loan Servicing, Ed should be awarding any additional payments that you are eligible for without action. They should be doing that automatically or should have done it already, okay? You might be contacted by FSA or Fed Loan to certify additional employment. I would look out for an email, you know, and be on the lookout for communications from Fed Loan or FSA. However, I would say once July 1st rolls around and these things are going to get transferred to MOHELA, you can also, and I would highly suggest you do, resubmit and make sure that you've certified your full employment history. All right. It's no, like, there's nothing to lose by submitting these employment certification forms as many times as you need to. We've had borrowers who have had to do it constantly because they haven't been processed properly and things like that. Unfortunately, these servicers are very unreliable. So I would say once things transfer over to MOHELA July 1, it's in your interest and benefit to resubmit any of those certification forms for your full employment history that would be eligible. Okay, moving on to the next one. All right, let's say you have direct loans, good, but you have never applied at all. You want to submit a PSLF form so that the Department of Education can review your loans under the new rules of this limited waiver, okay? You can submit this form through the PSLF help tool. I'm going to show you a little bit later on how Savvy can help you to submit these forms on your behalf. You need to do this before October 31st in order for your case and your situation to be reviewed under the expanded eligibility of the limited waiver, okay? All right, moving on to the next one. Let's say you tried to certify employment, but were denied. Okay, this happens all the time. This is still happening. I would say you know, for any borrowers out there who are experiencing this frustration, you are not alone. So if the department previously said your employer was not eligible, I would say you need to submit a new form to see if you can now receive credit towards forgiveness. Okay, so if you thought you previously were not eligible, you've been rejected, what have you, resubmit the forms. All right. Again, you can find which employers the department deems eligible through that PSLF help tool. But I would say, you know, mostly the employer qualifications have not changed around public service loan forgiveness. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, we're going to sort of switch gears a little bit and just talk about a few other types of forgiveness that might be out there that you might be able to take advantage of. There are some career-specific loan forgiveness programs for healthcare professions, including nurses, physicians, pharmacists, dental professionals, mental health professionals. There's also things around teacher loan forgiveness. This is a program for full-time, highly qualified teachers working at a low-income school or education agency, also sometimes known as Title I. and working in elementary or secondary school. We're not going to go into more detail here, but I will say this: the Savvy tool supports both teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness. So you'll be able to see where you might be eligible for that later on. Other types of forgiveness: cancellation and discharge. We've got total and permanent disability discharge, closed school discharge, defense to repayment. This has been what you've been hearing about a lot in the news lately, with a lot of that debt being canceled. False certification of eligibility, death discharge, and unpaid refund. Again, we're not going to go into too much detail there, but there's more information about these programs at studentaid.gov. All right, so a quick checklist to run through this. If you are out there and you're still sort of trying to figure out where you fall on this sort of PSLF pipeline. So number one, confirm you have a qualifying loan. If you don't have a direct loan, you're going to need to consolidate. You want to enroll in a qualifying repayment plan. That's going to, the best option is going to be an income-driven repayment plan. You want to verify your employer qualification through that employment certification form and make sure you're keeping that documentation. Continue to work full-time and complete those 120 payments if you're not there already. All right. And like I said, we're going to talk more about how the Savvy tool can help many of you with this later on. All right, so just a couple FAQs, common questions that we get around public service loan forgiveness that we want to take, and then we're gonna turn it over for some questions. Number one, can you double up on payments and earn more credits per month? No, you must make 120 payments, these can't be sort of doubled up, and you can only receive a maximum of 12 credits per calendar year. How do I check how many PSLF credits I have? So you can check and you can start to sort of track towards this program by submitting what's called the employment certification form. Again, the program is transferring from FedLoan to MOHELA, so you're going to want to be submitting those to MOHELA starting July 1. Last but not least, if I've been working in public service and I'm just finding out about this program, can those years count? Absolutely. This program is retroactive. I just saw a question. Can previous years of service count? Yes, absolutely. You can apply to certify retroactively any employment from October 2007 to present day. Okay, we're going to take a quick pause there. I know we wanted to take a few questions, so I'm going to turn it back over to Cody, and then I know he's got some great information for you all about repayment plans, and then we're going to talk a bit more about Savvy. I know we're running short on time, so I apologize, Cody.
Oh, no worries. That was the heart of what we wanted to talk about today. There are so many updates, and a lot of it centered around public service loan forgiveness. And from experience, so many of our supporters are nurses and teachers and social workers, and frankly, a large portion of the people that follow us qualify. So we wanted to really give it some attention. There's a lot of great questions. I've picked some that I think are really helpful to a broad set of people. So I hope this is helpful to a lot of folks here. The first one, this I think was the most important. I saw it everywhere. Can parents qualify for public service loan forgiveness?
Yeah, great question. So parents, and by that we really mean parent plus loans. These are loans taken out by parents on behalf of a child, but in the parent's name. So if you've got a parent plus loan, yes, you can qualify. However, you need to consolidate that loan. Okay. So that's the first step. You need to consolidate that loan. And then from the point of consolidation forward, you can start accumulating eligible credits. Now, one quick thing on the consolidation here, if you have a parent plus loan and you've got additional loans that are for yourself, okay, you want to consolidate them all together, because under this waiver, when you consolidate those with other loans, they're going to take the credit count of the other loans. So instead of starting back at 0, they're going to start at whatever credit count you had for your other loans. I know that's a bit in the weeds and we don't have a tremendous amount of time to go into too much detail, but this is definitely something the Savvy team can help you to think through. If you are in the position where you think you need to consolidate and you're not sure whether to consolidate your single loan or with your other loans, and if it can benefit you, because it can definitely benefit you under this waiver, this is the time to work with us. And again, it's completely free. This is provided to you thanks to the generosity of Student Debt Crisis Center.
Thank you, Lindsay. And on that consolidation piece, I see another question. It was from Amanda, and I saw some other people that asked a similar question, but you mentioned that parent plus loans need to consolidate to qualify for PSLF. You also mentioned earlier that under the new waiver rules, some borrowers may need to consolidate. But I saw that Amanda brought up a good point. She was told in the past that if she consolidated her loans, that would derail her from being able to access loan forgiveness sooner rather than later. Can you just tell us like what's changed and why are borrowers being encouraged in some situations to consolidate when typically we would say to really think about that decision wisely before taking any action?
Totally. Yeah, we stressed up until basically October of last year, be very careful about consolidating because it can reset your credit count. Now, under this waiver, essentially what they've done is because they are trying to do a sort of a look back retroactively and open up the eligibility, now payments prior to the consolidation are able to count. But you need to, it's still very confusing to borrowers because they've got stuck in their head that, the consolidation is going to set them back. And that's not the case right now. At least for this limited waiver up until October 31st. We'll see what happens after there. We've been, haven't been given guidance as to what that's going to look like. But I would say it's totally understandable why you should be apprehensive. In fact, it means, you paid it, you did a good job of trying to look out for yourself. But now if you don't have a direct loan, you're at least going to need to consolidate your loan. And in fact, the credits beforehand are going to be able to count. Okay. So this is really huge. And people need to take that action before October 31st.
Yeah, I just want to stress that October 31st and also encourage folks, do not wait. The department's already anticipating, thousands, if not more, at the end of October. And the sooner you get it in, the sooner you can get the process started. And I will say that, personally, as Student Debt Crisis Center, we have worked and heard from borrowers that have received this relief. And I know, Lindsay, you work with borrowers all the time and actually are able to recover and get them relief.
Yeah. And I would just say, I saw a question come through, consolidate with whom? Consolidate with MOHELA. If you, it's actually, when you go through the process on studentaid.gov, that's where you can consolidate. And you indicate that you're looking to pursue public service loan forgiveness, they will direct you to consolidate with MOHELA. Okay.
Natalia, since I had you on, I was going to toss a question to you that I know we've talked about many times here. But in the past, a borrower who was applying for PSLF would need to still be working while they were applying and all the way through the process of receiving loan forgiveness. But that's changed with this new rules, right?
Yeah, and great question. That's absolutely changed. We have worked with borrowers that have retired, as long as you've met those 120 payments, and especially with the new changes where your time as a FFEL borrower counted, it is okay if you retired or if you're not still working in your PSLF qualifying job. That is only up until October 31st of this year.
Yeah, that's a big one. We used to hear from a lot of folks who would be doing, public service their whole life, had all these years qualifying for PSLF, retired, like Natalia said, or left their job and then found out about PSLF and they couldn't apply. So this new rule really opens the door for a lot of those folks. Because again, if you put in the time, if you did the service, you're supposed to be rewarded with the loan forgiveness. These rules are making that promise actually deliver for a lot of folks. Okay, I'm going to do.
And just to be clear, real quick, just from the chat, MOHEA is a federal student loan servicer. They are the people that service your loan or the lender on behalf of the Department of Education. So you still have a federal loan, but MOHEA is the entity that you talk to. And if you don't want to talk to them, you can talk to Savvy, because we know so many people don't like talking to the loan servicer.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And maybe I can, add a little extra context too by just connecting the dots. Natalia mentioned earlier all these updates, and one of the updates was that student loan servicers are leaving the industry. One of those servicers was Fed Loan Servicing, who took care of the PSLF program. Today, MOHELA is that servicer who handles PSLF. That's why Lindsay and Natalia said that you'll need to work with MOHELA. And some of you are going to see your loan servicer change over the next few weeks and months as well. Okay, I'm going to take a few more here. We'll jump into another section about repayment plans, and then we'll take some more questions at the end. I saw this come up a lot, Lindsay, and hopefully you can help clarify. People wanted to know, do you have to have completed your 120 payments to benefit from these new rules?
No, no, absolutely not. It's a great question. Many people are confused. You don't need to have completed your 120 payments before October 31st to benefit. To benefit, you need to take one action and one action only, really, okay, which is to make sure that you've certified your complete employment history. And how do you do that? It's by submitting that PSLF form, that one and only form for the PSLF program, that employment certification form for any current or previous employment you might have had. And you're going to want to submit that to MOHELA starting July 1st. But you don't need to have reached the 120. For the majority of borrowers, they're going to end up benefiting by getting a lot closer to the 120 during this waiver. Some will have reached the 120 and they'll be eligible to have their loans forgiven right now. But for the majority, it means that they're going to get a lot closer because they will now be eligible to have payments that were previously ineligible now counted. And so that's the good news here, but you don't need to have made it to that 120.
And I've got a broad question, and then we'll go to the next section. But I saw a lot of people who said, I submitted a PSLF form last year, the year before, and I was denied. Is there anything that I can really do at this point?
Yes. Yes. All right. But you resubmit that form, resubmit it. I would say not right now, like as in today, but I would say wait until July 1st and submit it right to MOHELA. Okay. Because if you were previously denied, there's a very, very, very good chance it was because of a loan type, repayment plan. These are all things that under this limited waiver, they've changed the rules. And so now when you resubmit that, it's going to be reviewed entirely differently and you will be eligible most likely. All right. So even if you submitted the form, I would say like in October of last year, right around when this was announced, resubmit. That's my best advice. Like don't self-select here. If you think that there's any chance you could be eligible, if you were previously denied, especially if you were previously denied, resubmit that form.
Great. All right, let's jump into the next section here, which is about the repayment programs that exist to help borrowers afford their monthly payments. If we can go to the next slide. Perfect. So, we just talked about public service loan forgiveness. That applies to public service workers with federal student loans. We're going to talk about the repayment plans, which can be combined with public service loan forgiveness for the maximum benefit. But if you don't work in public service, this section is for you as well, because you can make your monthly payment more affordable. And there is a loan forgiveness mechanism at the end of these programs. So let's go to the next slide and we'll just dive in here. So when a borrower leaves their program, there's typically a 6-month window where they don't have to make monthly payments. That's called your grace period. After that, if you don't take any action, you will be put in the 10-year standard repayment plan. And the point of that plan, or the way it's structured, is that you make the same monthly payment every month for 10 years, and then your student loans are paid off. More and more so, including myself and many others, that structure doesn't work and doesn't make sense. So thankfully, there are federal programs that can lower your monthly payment and make it more affordable. So on the next slide here, we're going to introduce what is called an income-driven repayment plan. So an income-driven repayment plan can make your monthly payments more affordable because it calculates your monthly payment as a percentage of your discretionary income, and it's based on your income and family size, not the amount of student debt you have. And so because it uses your income as part of the formula, your monthly payment could be as low as $0 per month. That's how powerful these programs can be. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned for those that were joining today because they wanted to hear about public service loan forgiveness, you can combine income-driven repayment plans with public service loan forgiveness. The way that would work is that you use an IDR program, an income-driven repayment program, to lower your monthly payments. And by doing so, you maximize the amount of debt that's remaining to be forgiven at the end of your time. If you are not pursuing public service loan forgiveness, again, you can still use an income-driven repayment plan to lower your monthly payment. Next slide. So who benefits? Borrowers with consistently low incomes should explore an income-driven repayment plan. As Natalia mentioned, historically, a servicer would push people into deferment or forbearance, which has less benefits and really isn't the best choice for borrowers. if you lost a job or have decreased hours and income due to the pandemic, you can benefit. If you want to lock in a lower payment for a year, maybe you have low income right now, and you just want to make sure that this payment is steady over the next year, you can enroll. And those who are excluded from COVID-19 relief, if you haven't received any benefits during the pandemic, this program works for you. So I wish we could dive into the details of each program, but they're all somewhat similar. There are some small nuances. I'm just going to list them here. And if you want to look into this more, you can find out the details of each program. But on the left, we have the newer, most generous options: revise pay-as-you-earn and pay-as-you-earn. And as we work our way to the right, the programs are less generous, that take longer to complete. Those are income-based repayment and income contingent repayment. So just to help conceptualize this, here's an example of someone who's single, has one child, and they have $37,000 in student debt. This person would have a monthly payment of $364 a month. Under an income-driven repayment plan, they could pay as little as $0 if they have low income. They could pay $49 a month if they have $25,000 in income. And you can see all the way up to $75,000 in income, there's still some benefits for this borrower. So if you're struggling to afford your monthly payments and all of your other bills, these programs can be very powerful. Next slide, please. So here's a quick just explainer and summary of how you enroll in these programs. Step one is that you do have to submit an application, and you can do that at the Department of Education's website. You can do it through your student loan servicer, or you can work with our friends here at Savvy who've created a tool to make the process more easier, and also to make it so you don't have to necessarily contact your servicer and go through the rigmarole of dealing with these companies that have such poor reputations. After you apply, you will enter your repayment plan, typically within about 30 days. And then we always tell folks, put it on your calendar. You will need to recertify your income within the next 12 months to stay in the program. If you miss your recertification deadline for that period, you'll be put back into your monthly payment at the typical number, which would be much higher. And you can have interest capitalized onto your principal balance. There can be a lot of consequences. You can always re-enroll and recertify into the program, but if you put it on your calendar and you recertify within 12 months, there will be no disruptions. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that you can lower your monthly payments under income-driven repayment, and you could do so while you're doing public service loan forgiveness, and you would have your loans forgiven after 120 payments, which could be 10 years. For those who do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness, you can have your loans forgiven after completing an IDR program. And the way this works is that a borrower can recertify up to 20 or 25 years, depending on the plan. And like I said, after you complete the 20 or 25 years, you're eligible to have your loans forgiven. Now, on the next slide here, we kind of touched on it, but many borrowers were pushed into forbearance and other plans instead of an IDR program. So what happened was that many people who should have had their loans forgiven after 20 or 25 years were not actually in the program that they needed to. The new plan that Natalia mentioned earlier is to fix IDR so that people who were in forbearance for many years are actually closer to receiving loan forgiveness in IDR program. And for many people, they'll automatically get forgiveness because they've already done 20 or 25 years. They should have already received it. So just a quick set of FAQs so we can talk about, so we can address some of the top questions here. What should you do if your income or family size changes before your recertification deadline? You can recertify anytime. This was huge for people during the pandemic because we talked to people who are in an income-driven repayment plan, lost their job and didn't know what to do. The good news was that they could recertify right then and there and lower their monthly payments. So you can always recertify. Will I pay taxes on debt forgiven under IDR? Yes. unlike public service loan forgiveness, IDR is currently set up that you would pay taxes under this program. The good news, though, is that Congress during the pandemic passed a law that prohibits taxing student loan forgiveness for the next 5 years. So for now, IDR will not be taxed if you get forgiveness. In the future, though, it could revert back to the original rules, which was that it was taxed. Public service loan forgiveness is not taxed. And what other documentations can you submit? We know there's a lot of folks out there that have kind of unique employment situations. Maybe they can't get the documents they need. You can submit other documentation. You can use a pay stub as proof of income. And you can even right now during the pandemic, contact your student loan servicer and verify your income over the telephone. Now, I have to say, we always warn folks about what we call debt relief scams. There will be a lot of people here who I'm sure have received mail and telephone calls from companies that say, I can make your student loan payments affordable. I can erase your student loans, but they're not trusted entities the way that our nonprofit is or our folks here at Savvy are. Instead, these are just predatory for-profit companies. And the scam is, you can notice it. You know, they'll often promise immediate loan forgiveness instead of being honest, which is there's a process and a program to qualify for. They'll use pressure situations like deadline approaching. There is virtually never a deadline other than these new temporary rules. You can always enroll in programs that the federal government offers. And again, there's a set of predatory practices that just drive us crazy. One of them being that they lie and say they work for the Department of Education. Now, I saw some folks in here who talked about complaints they wanted to issue. If you have a complaint, we do recommend you contact the Student Loan Ombudsman's office, and there's an email here. They accept complaints. They can also resolve issues that you have between you and your loan servicer or you and the Department of Education. So it's one of the few places you can go where the government will actually respond to your inquiry and provide information and evidence to help provide the right answer. And again, that's the Department of Education Student Loan Ombudsman's office. So here's your checklist. First, go learn about the repayment plans. You can do that at studentaid.gov. You can also work with our friends at Savvy here, and we'll put the link in the chat. There are different plans, and we want folks to be aware of their rights before they dive into these things. Submit an IDR application online. Again, you can do it through your servicer, through the Department of Education, or you can use the free tool by Savvy. And last, again, put it on your calendar. We want everyone to recertify in time so they don't face any disruptions in their affordable repayment plan. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Lindsay, who can talk about the Savvy tool, because I know we've been saying that it can help you with these programs. Lindsay, feel free to take it away from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody. So, I know that this has been a ton of dense information, and, this is exactly why we wanted to be able to provide you all with assistance and a tool for absolutely free, so that it can help you to not only better understand your options and sort of navigate through this process, but actually do things like submit the forms for you, pre-fill them and digitize them, and then help you to monitor and track your progress. So first, just a little bit about who we are at Savvy on this next slide. Just because I think it's important, so that you all can know sort of what a trusted resource we are, especially when we work with Student Debt Crisis Center and this community of borrowers. So Savvy is a social impact technology startup based in Washington, D.C. We were founded by policy experts and advocates who had been fighting on behalf of the borrower for over a decade, and essentially developed a technology platform and service to help borrowers like you and like me. I have a little over $200,000 in student loan debt myself, to be able to better understand their debt, and then actually get enrolled in these programs like income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness. I just saw someone say, I finished my app on Savvy. That's awesome. Yep, that's exactly why we're here. We are free of charge, absolutely free of charge. You'll never be charged anything for Savvy through Student Debt Crisis Center. And so I'm just going to take you through a little bit about how you can get started and what's involved. So essentially, we ask you a few questions. And we can basically give you a free sort of diagnostic assessment as to what your eligibility is around programs like public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, and income-driven repayment. You'll be able to see a personalized repayment and forgiveness plan when you reach the end of the process. And then we actually take on all of the administrative burden for you and sign and submit that paperwork, or you sign it, but we submit it on your behalf. And then we monitor it to make sure that you reach the desired outcome, especially for borrowers who are trying to pursue public service loan forgiveness and they've got 3 or 4 different certification forms for 3 or 4 different employers. We send that out to the HRs for you. We get it signed. We submit it on your behalf. So we take care of all this for you. And the best part is that you are able to work one-on-one with our student loan experts. So this is just, one of the great things about being a part of the Student Debt Crisis Center community. So you can get started. I know we've put this in the chat, but by going to app.buysavvy.com/register/borrowers, you can sign up and get started with your account from there. Once you do, on this next slide, you will see your dashboard. And this is where you're going to be able to sort of track and monitor all of your progress. So you'll see here things like start a new ECF form and things like that. We can do it all for you from there, and you can monitor that progress from your account. On this next slide, you'll see sort of the little bit of the savvy process. So we're going to ask you some questions around your tax filing status, your income, and your employment. You can add any current or previous employers you might have had to this. And that way we're going to be able to basically create those employment certification forms for you for each of those different employers and send those off. The last step really in the savvy process is to sync your loans. You basically are able to sync your loans using Plaid. It's sort of a best-in-class syncing technology. This basically allows us to see a read-only snapshot. It doesn't give us access or anything like that, but it allows us to basically see things like your balance and your interest rate. All of these are important in being able to give you the most accurate estimate possible. So that's what we do. And then once you've done that, you'll reach this end screen here on this next slide, which will basically show you the plan results. And this is basically what your best options are. You don't have to give us your social security number. No, all of this is secure information. And we show you what your options could be as far as your lowest monthly payment, what your total payment over time would be, and what your potential forgiveness might be if you're eligible. And then for those of you who might be having issues or running into problems or need your questions answered, we have an amazing internal support team. You can contact our support through your Savvy account, click contact support. You can send us a message and begin to initiate that process. All right, and I think we're gonna maybe take some more questions. I know we're over time, so I'll turn it back to you, Cody.
Yeah, let's definitely dive in. There's plenty of great questions here. Let me see what I've got here in front of me. This is a question from Stephanie, back to the servicing issue. Stephanie said that they received an email that their loans were being transferred to a new company. They're not really sure why this is happening or what it means. So can we dive into it one more time?
Sure. Natalia, do you want to take that one, or I'm happy to take this? I can go ahead and answer it. So basically, if you had one of the servicers, Navient, FedLoan, or Granite State, you are likely, if you haven't been already, going to be transferred to a previously existing or new servicer. And this is purely sort of an administrative transfer. And basically, everything should remain the same about your balance, your interest rates, things like that. But you'll now have sort of a new account that you're going to need to create and log into in order to manage those loans. Okay. So you want to make sure, though, that you are getting information from a reputable source, and that email is coming from the servicer itself. So again, if you are with Navient, those are being transferred to Advantage, so you would be contacted by Advantage. If you were in FedLoan, you are likely going to Mohilo, or you might have gone to Nelnet. And if you are in Granite State, you're going to Ed Financial.
Yeah, I'm sure many of you are recognizing the trend here, which is there are a lot of changes happening in the student loan space, servicers being one of them. I think broad advice for every change is to just, make sure your contact information is updated, make sure you're paying attention to the mail and emails you're receiving, because some of these changes, like servicer changes, can happen under the radar, and I know it creates a lot of stress for folks. All right, I see at least a few of you asked about forgiveness under an income-driven repayment plan. Lindsay, maybe we can just dive into that one more time. What is the mechanism for borrowers to receive forgiveness under an income-driven repayment plan? And maybe we can just spend a second explaining why it's different than public service loan forgiveness.
Sure. So under an income-driven repayment plan, you're able to receive forgiveness after sort of technically the 20 to 25 year payoff sort of horizon. And that forgiveness is normally considered taxable income. And so up until 2025 or the year 2025, at least, that is not considered taxable income. And unless that gets extended, it will go back to being considered taxable income, but you are able to get forgiveness under an income-driven repayment plan. That's different from public service loan forgiveness, which is a forgiveness program that will forgive the remainder of your loan balance if you've been working for a qualifying employer. So let's say you haven't been working for a qualifying employer, you work for a private entity, and you're interested in pursuing forgiveness. Your best bet would be through an income-driven repayment plan. All right. Otherwise, if you are eligible for public service loan forgiveness, and you have been working for a qualifying employer, then that would be the best program for you to pursue. There are, as we mentioned before, some professionally affiliated forgiveness programs based on occupation. There are some based on state. And so those also the Savvy tool can help you to look into as well. Or you can research those on your own, and you can go to studentaid.gov.
Great. I'm going to put that link to the Savvy tool one more time in the chat. And in fact, I want to just say it out loud because I know there's a lot of folks joining us via telephone as well. So the special link to get to the Savvy tool and be able to use it for free as an SDCC supporter is app.bysavvy.com, and that's bysavi.com/register/borrowers. I'm going to put that in the chat for everyone. And after today's presentation, just as a reminder, we will send an email tomorrow that has a link to this workshop so you can watch it on YouTube, and also has a link to the tool. So you'll get all this information one more time tomorrow after the Zoom presentation. All right. Another question that kept coming up that I think is pretty important was about the income-driven repayment plans and how to know which plan is best for you. I mentioned that there's 5 plans and we didn't get to talk about each one. So Lindsay, do you have like a quick tip for someone to enroll in the right plan that's the most beneficial for them?
Yeah, there are going to be different eligibility requirements based on, your loan type and disbursement date, so that's going to determine really which programs you're going to be eligible for. For example, Parent Plus loans, after being consolidated, you're only eligible for income contingent repayment, or for FFEL loans, you're only eligible for income-based repayment, things like that. So really, I think, and this is definitely not a sales pitch because this is absolutely free, but one of the great things about the Savvy tool is by entering in your information, we're going to show you based on your loan type and your income and things like that, what the best options are going to be. I would say the one thing about income-driven repayment plans, and I just saw this question come through, what if your income is $0? You're able to qualify for as low as a $0 monthly payment. And so I think it's important to know about income-driven repayment plans that at any point in time, let's say you're on one and your income decreases, you're able to, and even if it decreases down to $0, you're able to submit that IDR application or resubmit it at any point in time, now noting your lower income, and have that repayment recalculated right away. And so that way, when this is important for when payments do resume, that you're able to take advantage of a lower monthly payment. It's really important for you to know that. I didn't know that as a borrower. I called my servicer and basically, thought my only option was going to be forbearance or deferment. Did that and sort of squeezed out as much forbearance as I could. Anyway, I think that's definitely important for people to be aware of, is that you should be taking advantage of any changes, especially decreases in your income, so that you can make sure that you're getting on a lower monthly payment because of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the $0 repayment. I think that's really important. And Lindsay, I saw on the other side of the spectrum, folks who were saying, I'm in an IDR program, like I have a job, but I still can't afford my monthly payments. So I just wanted to also flag for people, we recognize there's people that live in very expensive parts of the country, or, have other things in life. We've got medical expenses, family expenses, there's a housing crisis with rent and mortgages. These programs work for a lot of people, but unfortunately they don't work for everyone. So I hear you, and we totally share the frustration for those that have enrolled and are still struggling. That's why we fight for more relief. But for so many of you, these programs will work and will be a benefit. And so we have to share them with you. We think it's really important. Okay, I know we're bumping up against time here, so I think we'll try to check off a few more questions here before we jump off. I see a lot of folks have had issues, Lindsay, where they work for, well, let me take that back. They work at a place like a hospital or a school, but their employer is technically some sort of for-profit company that's a contractor. So do these people qualify for public service loan forgiveness?
Yeah. So unfortunately, under the current rules, it's based not on your occupation, but on your employer. And a lot of contractors are private for-profit entities and do not. But I would say this, I'm optimistic that in the coming year or so, we will see some improvements to that system. And, Natalia and Cody can probably speak better to this, but I know that they are trying to expand the sort of eligibility requirements there, so that someone who is working as a healthcare worker, but perhaps is employed by a for-profit entity is going to be able to qualify for this program. So I've never been more optimistic about that than now. So I would say stay tuned, because we could see some improvements coming about in the future. But unfortunately, as of right now, it's purely based on sort of what's on that W-2. And if that's sort of a contractor and a for-profit entity, then as of right now, it's not eligible, but that could change. And hopefully then it would be retroactive.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of work to try to expand this program. That includes, I saw a lot of adjuncts on here. It drives us crazy that professors who are adjuncts and maybe don't meet the hourly requirement for PSLF aren't eligible. There's a lot of work to try to smooth out these edges, and we're working on it. I want to underline what you said, though, Lindsay. It's all about your employer. And I saw someone said that they do research for federal grants. I saw some other folks on here saying that they work at a psychiatric hospital. All of these are great jobs and they sound like public service, but what matters is who is your employer. So if your employer is a government agency, or your employer is a 501c3 nonprofit that qualifies, then you're good. And I always use this example, like even the person who does janitorial work at City Hall, right? They're not really participating in like governance, but they're part of the government employment list, qualifies for public service loan forgiveness. So you can see how diverse and broad this program really is and how many people can fit under that umbrella. Okay, I'm going to take one more question here. Let's see. I've got so many good ones, and I want to make sure this is one that really applies to as many folks as possible. Lindsay, I think we should end on this note, because we've given folks a lot of information and there's a lot to do now. But a lot of people, including Marjorie, said they've been calling their servicer. They're trying to get a hold of more information about the status of their PSLF application. Can you just, as someone who's working with borrowers every day, can you just give us some information about what the process looks like right now and what people can expect?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you all, it's been sort of an absolute mess on the Fed loan side, especially because Fed loan has been getting ready to transition this program, especially around public service loan forgiveness, to MOHELA. And so if you have submitted a form in the past 3, 6 months, 8, and have not heard anything, or it was reviewed and it wasn't, where your credits thought they needed to be, I would say this: come July 1, have those forms ready and be prepared to resubmit those to MOHELA. That, I think, is going to be the best way to ensure that your forms, even if you've just submitted them recently, there's no harm in resubmitting them again. It will trigger a faster transition of your account, if it's at FedLoan or if it's another agency or servicer, over to MOHELA. But that's really the only action that you can take as a borrower. So you want to make sure that you do that. Okay. So I would say that that's probably the final note that I would end on.
Great. I'm going to just reiterate, and I'm going to put it in the chat here. We are going to be sharing a link to Savvy's tool. We'll share a link to the recording so folks can watch it again. And all of this will be sent to you automatically in an email tomorrow. So I'm going to put it in the chat here for folks who want the links now. If not, keep an eye out tomorrow and you will get all of these updates.
Great. And I was just going to reiterate, if you're having any issues, I saw some people might have been having issues syncing their loans. Sometimes it has to do with the servicer. If you're not able to sync those loans, if the servicer sync is down. So you can send a quick message to our support team through the chat in your account. We'll be able to make sure that we help you sync those loans. Huge shout out to Mary December as well, who got forgiveness on her loans, and has been a huge advocate. I see her again in the chat here today. And so just so happy that she's still here supporting us and all borrowers out there. She's probably the biggest advocate you guys could have. So anyway, thank you so much, Cody and Natalia. It's been another great session.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay and Savvy, for joining. And just want to remind folks right now that PSLF deadline for the waiver is October 31st of this year. Payments are at the moment set to resume on September 1st, but advocates such as Student Debt Crisis Center and so many others are working hard on that. And we're still working to get, broad-based debt cancellation. So check back. We'll be having more workshops and events to let you know what's going on. So we are always here to update you with the most up-to-date information. Thank you so much for joining.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And